says, have you been in a relationship? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had some, but they weren't right. So yeah, that's yes. um, one thing I'll just comment on that one. I'll give a little bit of comment to that, so it's not so just yes. Um, the thing about relationships, what I've realized is that most people don't know what relationships are. Most people think relationships are what I'm getting from the other person, when really true relationship is two people becoming a sincere gift to each other, a sincere gift to each other, and they don't know what love looks like. They think love is what I'm getting, but love is actually giving. It's sacrifice. Great quote. Love without sacrifice is mere sentimentality. So if you look at true love, it requires giving of yourself. It requires effort, work, really. It's two people becoming a sincere gift to each other. And people often ask, how do you know if two people are compatible? And it's a great question, because the word compatible comes from the same root word as the word compassion. And what does compassion mean? It means to suffer with, to suffer with and for the other person, to will the good of another, to suffer with, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad. This is what people have lost when it comes to relationships. It is that their mindset is very selfish. And that's not a relationship. Relationship is built on selflessness and love, and love is selfless. The greatest love ever, look at Christ, total sacrifice, total self-giving. And so we are happiest when we're doing that too, when we actually find a relationship that we can be truly invested in. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of patience, sacrifice, things like that, but it's worth it. It's worth it when you find somebody and, a relationship where two people want what's best for each other. And that's the goal. That's the vow, really, to suffer with and for each other in the good times and in the bad. But the thing is, even though there might be moments of darkness and dark times and ups and downs, but if you're really truly trying to care for each other and want what's best for each other, then in the end it's worth it, and your love for that person grows over time. Which is why if you look at people who are married for like 60, 70 years, they can actually say that they love each other more now or then than they did when they first met. Why? Because they're old and wrinkly? No. Because they worked at it. They sacrificed. They actually, cared about each other and got through those moments. In those darkest of moments, they said, we're not going to give up. And I remember there was a really great psychologist, family therapist, and very successful. And when he would have couples come in, he would say, okay, so how do you diagnose yourself? What's the problem? And they would say, well, something like, well, we don't love each other anymore. And he said, oh, okay. Well, I have the answer. It's one word, very simple, one syllable. Do. Do love each other. And they'd be like, what? Yeah, do. It's a choice. It's work. It's effort. The problem is that, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What is your treasure? Your time, your money, your effort, blood, sweat, tears. When you put and invest into something, your heart grows for it. So, and that's what it takes. You have to invest, you have to put into that. You have to put into that relationship and never stop dating each other in that sense. You should be pursuing each other in that way. And so in that regard, the reason why relationships are so broken these days is that people are selfish. It's if you look at life, everything's kind of flipped on its head. It's like, if you want to get, give. If you want to love, if you want to be loved, love someone else. If you want to be happy, make someone else happy. If you want to have your life enriched and be full and fulfilled, make others' lives rich and full and fulfilled. Everything in life is kind of switched on its head that way. You want to be successful in business? Well, or you're making money? Cool. Then serve others with your business. Make your business something that actually helps others. And that's the thing, everything, like even this, phones or TVs or anything, they're all services that enrich someone else's lives. And what happens when you give, you receive. And yeah, of course, people use businesses to make money and whatnot, but that's the true heart of everything in life. Everything in life, if it has the true heart of love, will come back to you in that regard. It's not a karma thing. It's just how it's the workings of the universe. And so with relationships, it really is about you put into it, you're gonna get something back. And even if it doesn't work and it fails or whatever, ultimately, what have you done? You've grown as a person. You've grown in your ability to love. And so, like when people, get into these relationships, and maybe 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, whatever it is, 20 years down the road, they're just like, oh, I just don't know if I love this person anymore. Okay, then the answer is simple. Do love the other person. And when you do that, you actually grow your heart. You grow your ability to love the other person. You grow in that ability. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So same thing with love. If you don't nurture it, it won't grow. And so it becomes stagnant. You have to put the effort and the time into it. And of course, there's a lot of nuances within relationships. There's a lot of things looking whether or not a person has enough virtue to do that. So not every relationship will work because not every person is perfect, for each other. And there's, personality differences and whatnot. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to that because it's ultimately not about you. It's about, and there's another thing too. People think of relationships as what they're getting out of it. Well, I want to be with this person because this person makes me happy. It's not about you. Relationships ultimately come down to this. Okay. What is it for? It's so that you two people can become a stable foundation for children. That's basically, one of the primary, if not the primary thing a relationship is about. Eventually children. So these two people are stable enough and strong enough that other people, kids, can come into that and actually have that fortitude for them to grow up to be happy, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically happy and healthy. That's what it's ultimately for. That's why it has to be functional. Because if it's dysfunctional, then what are the kids going to learn? They're not going to always listen to what you have to say, but they're definitely going to watch what you do. And so if you don't have that stable ground, well, then they're going to learn instability. They're not going to learn good instincts. If you don't see dad treating mom right, what is the son going to do? Well, his dad is usually his hero when he's growing up. Well, he's not going to learn good habits of how to treat women right. And vice versa. If a woman sees her dad not treating mom right, well, what is she going to do? She's not going to learn how to find a good guy who's going to treat her right because she doesn't have a paradigm for that. She's not seen that. Her instincts aren't there. His instincts aren't there. So it's really important you choose the right person. You have to see if that person has sufficient virtue. Well, how do you find that? Well, you have to see whether or not they can sacrifice. Remember? Love without sacrifice is mere sentimentality. So if the person can't sacrifice in the front of the beginning of the relationship, well, what makes you think they're going to sacrifice in the middle and in the end? Hit or miss, which is why 50% of marriage is divorce. Still better than the average hookup, that's for sure. So what do you have to do? How do you find whether or not they have sufficient virtue? Well, sacrifice. Love without sacrifice is mere sentimentality. Okay, well, what kind of sacrifice? What does it look like? Well, you have to see whether or not they can sacrifice the things that their instant gratification. Whether or not they can stop acting like an animal, and have actual respect for you and for themselves. And, this is for guys and girls. I'm not just saying one or the other. So girls and guys have to respect for themselves and then for the other person and setting those boundaries. How do you know if the other person really loves you or cares about you if they're willing, unless you put up the boundaries and see whether or not they're going to try to test those boundaries. And then you know what they're really about. You can't know their intent without those boundaries.